Thank you for joining us. Miriam.
Well, as we have grown more affluent, the amount of our weekly spending that goes on food has almost halved over 35 years and now stands at 14.7%. After a drop during the economic crash, 86% of us now perceive ourselves as healthy, and a person born in 2015 in Ireland can expect over 67 years of healthy life. Despite this, there seems to be a growing obsession with that vague term wellness and the foods that may add to it or subtract from it. We're bombarded with headlines as to which food is healthy and which unhealthy. For instance, the market for gluten-free products increased by 36% in 2017 over the previous year, despite only 1% of the population being diagnosed as celiac. We hear of miracle foods and superfoods, and some foods which it's claimed can combat the diseases we dread most. So is any of this real? Can our food really cure what ails us? That's what we'll be debating later, but first, Conor Wilson has been examining the evidence.
We've never had such a choice when it comes to the food we eat. We've also never had so much information and advice available to us. But how do we know that the information we're receiving is accurate or safe? Are some foods more powerful than others? And can the food we eat cure or protect our bodies from disease?
Today I'm going to make you some lunch using coconut milk and then mushrooms, some kale, really good for supporting the liver to detox any excess estrogen, and just some base vegetables like carrots and onions. And I'm going to use chicken stock as well. The brassica.
Niamh Burke is a nutritional therapist based in Galway and one of 305 practicing members of the Nutritional Therapists of Ireland. She offers advice on nutrition as well as programmes on detoxing.
The way I feel about food is that people should try and find a diet that they can stick to, but that they also feel well on and that they're healthy. No exact diet is going to suit every person. So quite often I look at their food diary and we might make some tweaks based on usually the way they're kind of eating anyway, because a few simple changes can often, make a big difference in health. Well, I suppose I'd like to tell you a little about my own personal journey. I had really bad PMS. It was very scary, actually, because you could go from paranoia to rage to crying to panic attacks to anxiety. It was so bad that I was going to counselling and I went to the doctor over it and everything, and he wanted to put me on an antidepressant. So I eventually found out that through genetic testing I did, and I went to a doctor as well, that actually my body wasn't detoxing my estrogen properly. And through diet changes and using supplements as well, everything changed. All my panic attacks, everything went away. So in a way, the nutrients healed my body and healed my mood as well.
Niamh is not alone in offering detox programmes. Many people go on detox diets at the beginning of each year, but is it something our bodies need?
All you need to detox is a healthy liver, a healthy kidney, and a good balanced diet so that they both have the nutrients they need to do their job. I would look as well where someone goes on a very restricted diet for a week. They're typically maybe a lot of juices or just a lot of fruit and vegetables, but it means that your protein levels are down, your calcium levels are down, your iodine levels are down. You've deprived your body actually of a huge range of nutrition for a week. And really looking at that as a dietitian, I'm not sure how that is actually healthy for somebody.
Well, some of the doctors would say, we don't need to be doing detox processes, that it's almost a myth.
Yeah, but what about all the people that have breast cancer? I mean, estrogen-sensitive breast cancer, that's the one that would really affect. So there's different, if you can imagine, estrogen, it's the good, the bad and the ugly. That's what the metabolites are like. There's 2-OH, which is protective. 4-OH is really linked to high breast cancer link. And then the 16-OH is kind of the bad. It's not great to have high levels of it. But for example, you can push up the levels of the 2-OH, which is the protective kind, the good kind, with your brassica family and your cruciferous vegetables. So why would you not do that? I mean, I think it's silly for people to say you don't need to detox, because it's just when it's actually could just help people.
The Irish Cancer Society told Primetime that a diet rich in vegetables like cabbage and kale does not detox the body. And unfortunately, despite research on the topic, there is no clinical evidence of this approach having any beneficial effect on either the risk of developing breast cancer or the outcome from this disease.
So you ready to try the soup, Connor?
What do you see as the role for nutritionists or nutrition therapists in Ireland?
A lot of people call me a nutritionist, but actually I'm a nutritional therapist. My qualification was only a diploma. It was 3.5 years part-time. But we did have to do 200 hours clinical practice. So our college does prepare us for taking clients. And what I bring to my clients is my life experience and like all the study I've done on female hormones. I've really gone down that route.
I'm a dietitian, so I have a 4-year degree in human nutrition and dietetics from a university. But someone who does a 3-week course can call themselves a nutritionist. And for the general public, they have no idea that there's two different things there. So it means that there can be very mixed messages coming out there from people with different levels of qualification. And then if you go online, you can find, information to support almost any viewpoint. And unfortunately, quite a lot of it isn't based in science.
The rise of Instagram and food blogging has brought with it an endless stream of beautiful food and beautiful people. It's no longer about dieting, it's about clean eating, it's about wellness. But are cooks, models and gym instructors the best people to also advise us on nutrition? And do relentlessly positive posts about clean food and wellness always send the right message?
We met with broadcaster, writer and cancer survivor Louise McSharry.
I think it is problematic to believe that your best self is also your slimmest self, because the fact of the matter is bodies come in different shapes and sizes, and that's just the truth. Some people may think that if you really want to be your best self, then you will be extremely careful about every single thing you put in your mouth. You will read all of the articles about this is a superfood and that's a superfood, and you'll buy into it, even though a lot of it is BS. It's my own fault that I'm this fat slob, and I think that would be the way that lots of people who live in this wellness bubble would view me. But I know that I would be miserable if I tried to live that life.
What we see a lot of is people so distressed about eating. They have so much information of what you can't have and you can't eat and you're clean eating and all of this sort of thing, that we're seeing eating disorders really being fueled with this as well. And particularly one that we talk about now called orthorexia, which is obsessive healthy eating. So where people have lost the pleasure of food and just enjoyment of food, and they're actually really punishing themselves if they eat something that they consider to be a bad food. If they put sugar in something, it's nearly the end of the world.
And along with
Bernadette Bohan has twice recovered from cancer and is a firm believer in the benefits of a raw, plant-based diet. Bernadette has no nutritional qualifications, but has used her experiences to write several best-selling books, as well as running courses and seminars on diet.
We are eating way, way, way too much sugar now in the Western diet. So we really need to cut that back. There's huge benefits to moving to a plant-based diet, like you've more energy, you've better health, you're building a strong, healthy immune system. You lose weight on this diet. You never have to worry about putting on weight. The only risk on a plant-based diet is B12. And we even see within the meat-eating population that they still require B12. And when we look, say for example, Conor, we look at the elephant, the silverback gorilla. Now, this is the largest muscle structures on the planet. And what do they live on? They live on raw vegetation. So I think that knocks the argument out of the water.
Well, elephants are elephants and gorillas are gorillas, but
yes,
we're humans, we're different.
Yeah, but they're mammals. We are mammals, we are.
A good, balanced diet is one of the keys to us staying healthy. But are there shortcuts? Does nature provide us with superfoods, silver bullets that can reduce our chance of disease?
So let's talk through a few of these. This is kefir. This has become very popular lately.
It is, and I mean, it comes into the whole aspect of fermented foods, probiotics, and we do know that there is some nice benefits to the gut from fermented foods and from the probiotics and the beneficial bacteria in there. So, if someone wanted to use something like that, that would be fine.
Okay, so this is coconut oil. This is also hugely popular. There are entire sections of supermarket shelves now dedicated to coconut oil. Right, so if I swirl this around my mouth or if I cook all my food in it, I'm going to be really healthy as a consequence, yes?
To be honest, we are still saying that olive oil and rapeseed oil are better options. They're a monounsaturated fat, which we know is very good for us in terms of the heart. Coconut oil is very high in saturated fat, but I think we need a lot more research before we can say, yes, the time has come to everybody using coconut oil.
Can any of these foods be labelled or marketed as a superfood?
Not at the moment. That constitutes a health claim, and they also, none of them can put on the packaging that they will help prevent cancer or treat cancer, because again, that's an illegal claim. We have no science to say any specific food is going to do that.
Buying so-called superfoods might leave consumers out of pocket, if no worse off otherwise. But diet advice based on insufficient evidence can have far more serious consequences. Last year, the Advertising Standards Authority upheld a complaint against nutritional therapist Patricia Daly, who co-wrote The Ketogenic Kitchen.
The complaint centred on website claims that followers of the ketogenic diet could weaken cancer as well as enhance cancer patients' reaction to treatment. Claims that the ASAI determined could not be substantiated with scientific evidence. The ketogenic diet is a high-fat, low-carb diet. It forces the body into burning fats instead of carbohydrates, usually leading to weight loss. There have been widespread claims about its supposed benefits to cancer patients.
So the reason people think the ketogenic diet might be beneficial for cancer is a misunderstanding of something that actually happens inside tumours. We know that inside tumours and tumour cells, that they tend to use glucose in a different way than healthy cells do. They tend to use more glucose. We now know that's a consequence of cancer and not a cause. However, that misunderstood kernel of truth is now translated into glucose or sugar feeds your cancer, and therefore, if you don't take it, or you just take proteins or something else, it will stave off cancer. And that's a horrible misunderstanding, because all your cells need glucose, and your body doesn't discriminate between a carbohydrate from a carrot or a cake. It takes it in and it uses it. So this kernel of truth about something that is different in tumour metabolism has been horrifically misunderstood, and has now become part of this common vocabulary of diet advice from unqualified people. For example, if people lose far too much weight when they shouldn't be losing weight, when they're already struggling with a disease which is probably pushing their weight down and causing them to get inadequate nutrition, you set up a situation which is a perfect storm for, a poor prognosis and a poor outcome.
There are many other baseless claims about certain foods and their alleged cancer-busting properties.
Cancer dies in just 42 hours.
And despite warnings from health bodies and cancer research trusts, the claims persist.
Powerful foods like sprouting and wheatgrass and B17 foods. And B17-rich compounds are said to destroy cancer cells. Apple seeds is another thing that you can, a very simple thing. Very often we eat the apple and we throw away the best part. Full of nitrilicides that protect the body against disease.
In some of your videos, you talk about B17 vitamins and nitrilicides. What can you tell us about them?
Well, these are, the B17 was discovered by studying a tribe called the Hunsakuts, where they have no cancer in their society. And they have been widely studied, and they use a lot of apricot kernels. And it was found that these nitrilicides exist in the apricot kernels. And we also see that the same compounds exist in wheatgrass as well. So it's been studied that these compounds are beneficial to health.
You've said that the B17 vitamins destroy cancer cells and nitrilicides protect the body against disease. Now, I did check. I checked with a cancer researcher who said there's no evidence they do any of these things.
Yeah, I know, but when you have to look at the studies that it shows that these people, that have lived on these foods, do not have these type of diseases that we here in the Western world are plagued with.
More seriously, due to an acute health risk, the Food Safety Authority of Ireland advises against eating apricot kernels. They contain a compound that converts to cyanide when consumed and in large amounts can be fatal.
People with cancer are incredibly vulnerable. And if you have someone on the sideline telling them, oh, we have this thing that'll cure it, this panacea, it's very, very tempting. And it's very, very tempting to maybe forsake your traditional therapy for these promises, even if your doctors are advising against it. selling false hope to people is something that we really shouldn't be allowing, or also anything that might undermine your actual treatment chances.
I'm having my first chemo of cycle 5. Chemotherapy worked really well for me, and I am alive and I am healthy because I did what my doctors told me to do. I got some messages from people suggesting that I follow Dr. so-and-so's, alternative diet, which is, better than chemo. And to be honest, I don't think there was anything else during my treatment which made me so angry.
Conor Wilson reporting there. I'm now joined in studio by Mike Gibney, who's the Emeritus Professor of Food and Health at UCD, and Ivor Cummins, who's co-author of a book called Eat Rich, Live Long. You've also got a blog called The Fat Emperor. And I know you want to say that you wrote your book with a medical doctor as well. That's important to you, right, Ivor? OK, listen, isn't dietary advice really as simple as the author and activist Michael Pollan put it in 7 words, which are eat food, not too much, mostly plants?
Well, in an ideal world, Miriam, it would be, but unfortunately, and many people may not be aware, a study came out last year that 52% of American adults are pre-diabetic or diabetic. Now, it's an arbitrary distinction. They're essentially diabetic. So if most of your population is essentially diabetic, you've got to be really careful, because that means they're carbohydrate intolerant by definition. So when we push a very high carb food pyramid, and the majority of your people are essentially diabetic, that's a challenge, shall we say.
You have a blog, as I said, called The Fat Emperor, and in your book, I think you have a chapter on cancer avoidance strategies. You're an evangelist slightly, I think, aren't you, for ketogenics? Well, yeah, right. And we just heard there in the film there people, and it was very interesting to watch them, who believe that the ketogenic diet can treat cancer. But as we heard, it's based on a huge misunderstanding.
Yeah, well, the thing about glucose is if you cut the glucose in your diet, your liver can pump out any amount of glucose that's needed through gluconeogenesis. So although a ketogenic diet will lower the glucose somewhat, your liver will keep pumping out glucose. So that's the misunderstanding. Now, the ketogenic diet will also pump out beta-hydroxybutyrate, which is a ketone body associated with ketogenic diets. And that may have some effects. But I think the key thing is the research. I've interviewed many doctors and professors doing human research on this, Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, Dr. Colin Champ, and it's very interesting science, but they'd all say the science is in the middle of being explored.
Mike Gibney.
Well, I think you're absolutely right that the advice on healthy eating is pretty simple. I wouldn't necessarily agree with Michael Pollan on everything, but I think his 7 words there are not unfair. And I think that what we've heard in that clip there is a lot of quite seriously unsubstantiated material. But that's not new. It's been there for centuries. The only difference is that today we have social media, and social media drives it at a fantastic rate. We have the entry now of celebrity sports stars, chefs and the like, who have strong opinions on food and health, and they get a huge audience, and they are answerable to nobody in terms of pure science.
Does it matter, for instance, if someone, extols the virtues of a ketogenic diet, and in fact, if otherwise healthy people are just a bit overweight and this helps them lose weight, does it do any harm, this kind of stuff?
No, I'm all for it. If it doesn't do any harm, let them do it. I mean, this is we have a free world to do. I can't see any harm in going on a ketogenic diet, except in cancer. That's where I would have a serious problem. And the problem there is that cancer is strongly associated with cachexia. It's strongly associated with weight loss, in particular muscle loss. And Ivor was talking there about the liver will pump out glucose through gluconeogenesis. Well, that's because it's breaking down amino acids, which are required for proteins. That's where it derives its glucose from. So I would say if you want to go on a diet, to lose weight or look good, and the keto diet attracts you, fine. But if you're talking about cancer, no way.
Yeah. No, gluconeogenesis also takes advantage of the glycerol from the fat and takes the sugar backbone from glycerol. So there are many substrates going into that cycle.
But let's make it simple, because I'm worried my viewers are going to say they're bamboozled. I mean, put simply, the notion that a ketogenic diet in some way either treats cancer, that's wrong.
No, that is current research, ongoing 9 to 10 human trials, and you can't speak on it until the research is complete.
But surely if there was any truth in it, every oncologist and dietitian on the planet would be advocating a ketogenic diet.
Well, not when the science isn't all in. No, you can't unless there are published and accepted reports that validate it. And it also, there's emerging evidence that it may be negative for some cancers, may be positive for others. So until that's worked out,
right now, the state of the art says it's not a player in the game. So it may well be a player in 5 years or 50 years or 100 years, but there are people with cancer today being treated with cancer, and everyone involved in that has to deal with what's on the plate today, what we know today. And we have no evidence to say it works. No evidence whatsoever to say it prevents or cures or treats cancer.
Okay. And
are you accepting that?
I am accepting that it is obviously a work in progress in many teams all over the world assessing it. Now, it may very well turn out, as you say, and it may get conclusively closed. The ketogenic diet is primarily for diabetes. As we said, the majority of adult Americans are pre-diabetic or diabetic. Averta Health recently, using a ketogenic diet with several hundred diabetics, in a year got 94% massively reduced or off their medications, 60% regressed. Ketogenic diet is more currently for diabetes and for obesity and for those chronic diseases.
Go on, Mike, give me a minute.
Well, I mean, I can't accept that because the evidence from the National Institute of Health is that it really doesn't matter where your calories come from, that if you restrict your energy intake, you will lose weight. And the problem with diabetes in the United States is we have obesity, and the cure of that is to reduce weight. And the NIH-funded studies show emphatically there is no difference. And that's in population intervention studies. And
I just want to ask you a different question, which is that, isn't the notion, which Conor was talking about there in his film, clean eating, diet to combat disease, movements, they live off two groups of people, either the vulnerable who are ill or the worried well.
I will say, Miriam, that almost nothing in that video resonated with me whatsoever. And I agree there's an enormous amount of shillery out there. Unless you are buying a publication which is engaged with a doctor, a full medical doctor like myself, Dr. Jeffrey Gerber, he's a fellow of the Practitioners Association, I would be highly suspect of any information you're getting on the internet, to be quite honest.
Well, I would go further than that. A single doctor wouldn't matter a hoot to me. I'd be more concerned about the World Health Organization and what it has to say and all the global advice it gets, and I'd follow their advice.
The World Health Organization recently came out with severe restrictions on sugar, and yet I get a sense from some of the people in that video that sugar may be not so problematic.
It's not correct to say they've had a 10% energy from sugar for the last 35 years. They've come now to say that 5% might be a better idea.
Yes.
But they have the standard advice still is around the world. Hasn't changed in 30 years.
Well, on the point, if I could, on the point of it being calories only, 10 seconds. The Gardner study just came out, and there are countless more, whereby taking away all processed food and sugars and without calorie reduction, they've seen up to a stone 6 kilo loss within a year. And Verta Health are doing the same without changing calories. And endless science on that.
It's the calories that count.
And in 10 years, it'll be interesting.
Professor Gibney, Ivor Cummins, I appreciate you both coming in. David.
Thank you.